In the quiet, mist-covered fields of rural England, where nothing ever seemed out of place, a housewife in a terraced home found herself face to face with something so bizarre, so out of this world, that it shattered her understanding of reality. This is the alien encounter case of Pat Owens. A story so strange it was ridiculed, buried, and nearly forgotten until now. Stick around until the end because we're going to look at this case from every angle. The encounter itself, the haunting aftermath, the government reaction, and even other eerily similar stories from around the world. And question of the day. Have you or someone you know ever had a weird experience? Something you couldn't explain? Leave it in the comments. We might feature it in a future episode. Meet Pat Owens. Let's rewind to 1977. Patricia Pat Owens was a 54-year-old housewife living in Runcorn, a quiet working-class town in Cheshire, England. Not a hotspot for UFO sightings. Not a city known for high strangeness. Just an average British town in the post-industrial north. She lived in a modest council home with her husband and several of her 7 children. Her daily life was typical. Tea in the morning, laundry on the line, errands at the corner shop, gossip with neighbors. But here's something you should know. Pat had survived a world war, raised a big family, and was known by neighbors as incredibly grounded. Not prone to drama, not into science fiction. She didn't even own a science fiction book. So when she claimed she saw something that looked like a spaceship land near her garden, it shook everyone who knew her. Why would a woman like that make something like this up? A chilling November evening. It was around 6:30 p.m. on November 25, 1977. It had been a gray, overcast day, the kind the UK is famous for. Cold, damp, silent. Pat stepped outside to take in the laundry. And that's when she saw it. Hovering in the field behind her house, no more than 50 meters away, was an enormous, oval-shaped craft. Silver gray.
No visible seems.
And most disturbingly, completely silent. It didn't make a noise. No hum, no whoosh, nothing. Just still, Pat would later recall. She froze. The craft was larger than anything she'd ever seen in the air. Larger than a helicopter. Larger than a small plane. She described it as twice the size of a double-decker bus. Its edges glowed with a faint, pulsating white light. Not blinding, just wrong. Then it descended. Gently, slowly, like it was ignoring gravity. Now pause here and ask yourself, what would you do? Would you run? Hide?
Grab a camera.
Pat did none of these. She just stood there, laundry in hand, paralyzed. And then came the figures. 2 tall, humanoid beings emerged. They wore what appeared to be tight, silvery suits that shimmered under the field light. No facial features. No visible mouths or noses. They moved in perfect synchronization. They didn't walk. They glided, like ice skaters, but without touching the ground. The telepathic contact. This is where the story takes a turn from eerie to outright paranormal. One of the beings turned its head, or what Pat assumed was its head, and looked straight at her. She didn't see eyes. She just knew she was being watched. And then she heard something, but not with her ears. It was in my head, like someone speaking, but without sound. It didn't have words. It had meaning. This kind of experience is not unique to Pat. In dozens of alleged alien abduction cases, especially from the 70s and 80s, witnesses describe this exact sensation. A form of telepathic communication that bypasses language altogether. The message Pat received, she couldn't fully translate it. But she felt it was something like, "We mean no harm. Do not be afraid." After a few seconds, or maybe minutes, the beings turned back to the ship and vanished inside. Then the craft slowly lifted off and disappeared into the clouds without a sound. No wind.
No flam.
Just silence. And that's when Pat finally screamed. Physical aftermath. Narrator. Now here's where things get really weird. When Pat ran back into the house and told her husband, he didn't believe her. Who would? But when she couldn't sleep that night, when her eyes began to sting and her dog wouldn't stop barking at the backyard, something felt off. 2 days later, a red, triangle-shaped mark appeared on her left shoulder. Small, perfect, and faintly glowing in the dark. She tried to wash it off. It wouldn't budge. This mark, by the way, has been reported in dozens of other UFO cases. In 1973, in Pascagoula, Mississippi, 2 men claimed they were abducted by creatures, and both were found to have triangle-shaped skin impressions. In 1980, in the Rendlesham Forest incident, Britain's Roswell, U.S. military officers described glowing geometric shapes on their skin after encountering a mysterious craft in Suffolk. Coincidence? You tell me. But it didn't stop there. Her television began flickering. Her radio picked up unintelligible voices, even on channels with no stations. Light bulbs began blowing out. And her dreams? Filled with bizarre symbols, planets that weren't Earth, and a hum so low it shook her spine. The investigation and media circus. By early 1978, word of Pat's encounter spread. At first, it was local whispers in the neighborhood, gossipy headlines. But soon, national UFO groups came calling. One of them was BUFRA, the British UFO Research Association. They dispatched a field investigator who interviewed Pat for hours. They also brought a clinical psychologist who found no signs of mental illness or hysteria. She was even given a polygraph test, which she passed. The case made local papers and even appeared in a BBC Radio 4 documentary on modern British myths. But here's something most people don't know. Shortly after her story went public, she began receiving phone calls from blocked numbers, men with posh accents asking strange questions. Have you had contact before? Do you remember anything about 1971? Do you still have the mark? And then, silence. The calls stopped. Some believe these were government officials, or worse, members of the British Men in Black. Yes, they exist. And they've been documented by journalists like Nick Redfern, who claims the UK's Ministry of Defence had a secret division monitoring alien reports from civilians. Part 6, Eerie Connections and the Watchers Theory, 24:30, 28:00. Narrator. Pat's description of the beings. Tall, silver-suited, featureless, emotionless. Matches reports from across the globe. In South America, they're called the Silent Ones. In Sweden, the Machine Walkers. In some Native American traditions, the Watchers. These aren't your big-eyed, gray-skinned aliens. These are something older, something more observational, almost robotic. Not here to experiment, just to witness. And here's the creepiest part. In a 1979 case from the Scottish Highlands, a man named Ian McLaren claimed he was approached by 2 floating silver beings near a reservoir. He described the same sensation Pat did. A mental message that felt like, you are not ready. So, what if Pat wasn't hallucinating? What if she was chosen? And if so, why her? Could it be because she was an ordinary person? Uninfluenced, unimportant to media, yet a perfect observer herself? Pat's legacy and unanswered questions. Pat Owens slowly faded from public view. She stopped giving interviews by the late 1980s. And in 1998, she passed away quietly. No book deal.
No documentary. No final answers.
Her children refused to discuss the encounter. One son allegedly moved to Australia, refusing to speak to press. Neighbors still speak of that night in hushed tones. But here's something chilling. In 2013, an amateur UFO investigator visited Pat's old home. In the back garden, half-rotted and covered in moss, he found an old plank from the original fence. Etched into the wood, a series of triangles, one inside another, overlapping, just like the mark on Pat's shoulder. Musical note. Haunting ambient music returns softly. Narrator. Pat Owens never claimed to have all the answers. She never tried to profit. She never asked to be believed. But her story remains one of the most detailed, emotionally raw, and scientifically intriguing cases of alien contact on record. So what do you think? Was Pat a victim of a government experiment? A real visitor? A misunderstood mental event? Or something we don't even have the words for yet? Alien, drop your theory in the comments. Thumbs up like if you want more stories like this. Bell subscribe if you want to hear about Britain's Men in Black files, or the Welsh school UFO landing next episode. Until then, keep watching the skies.